Shalom. I'm Brother Yeshak, Restores the Truth Ministry, sharing with you another scripture nugget. Today's scripture nugget will be based upon Revelation or Hazan chapter 6, a portion of Revelation Hazan chapter 13, and a portion of Revelation Hazan chapter 18. We call this scripture nugget the beast, the mark, the number, and the name. Now, a special note before we begin to get deep into this study or this particular scripture nugget, we know that many are looking for a one world government as well as an obvious chip as evidence of the beast system or the entry into the beast system. However, the beast system is a 3-in-1 system. It is a system that is controlling all of mankind, all over this earth, all over this land, if I can say that. It is a 3-in-1 system based upon the economic system, the political system, and the religious system. Now we're going to begin in Hazan or Revelation chapter 6, and we're going to look at verse 2. What it says is, "And I looked and saw a white horse, and he who sat on it holding a bow. And a crown was given to him, and he went out overcoming or conquering, and to overcome or to conquer." Now we're going to break this down using the Strong's Hebrew and Greek dictionary, as well as perhaps the etymology of words from etymology.com. Now he that sat up on the horse had a bow. So let's look at the word bow. In this particular text, it's come from the Greek word number G5115 as toxon. Toxon. And it has a root word number G5088 as bow. So that's why that word bow is inserted in that particular text. Now let's look at that word techo. Remember, it has the techo word. Techo has a root word of tikto. Tikto, where we get that word techo from. And what it means is to produce from seed. As a mother, a plant, the earth. Bear, be born, bring forth, be delivered, be in travail. Now, if you can remember in Bereshit or in Genesis chapter 1 or in the various chapters when the Most High would say, "Let every kind bring forth fruit," paraphrasing, "after its kind." And the only way to do that is the kind has to have a seed in itself. And there's 19 times within the scriptures where the word techo is listed. And I have them displayed below. And we're going to look at some things that these scriptures, all 19 verses, have in common. There's a commonality, there is a harmony between all of these verses. Netanyahu, Lucas, Yochanan, Yaakov, and Galatians and Hazan Revelation, as well as the book of Hebrew or Hebrew. And what you'll find when you look at all of these particular texts, all these particular verses, you'll find a common phrase. It's either to bring, to bring forth or to brought forth, to born, to child, to bearest, to delivered, and bearest. All of these words are techo. So in other words, when you look at these scripture references, what you'll see is a birthing or a producing by way of a seed. So that's the purpose of that word bow in Revelation chapter 6, verse 2. It is a way of birthing or producing something by way of seed. And when you look at this particular verse, this particular chapter, or that particular word, you would notice a couple of things that you should really ask when you read it, and that is how and what. The how is relating to the jab. And the jab is making a change in the human DNA. The other question is the what. The what is the cause of this change. It is to control, it is to manipulate, and it is to position one to accept the system, the beast system. Now, one of the words that this bow or toxon has, the G5115, if you look at toxon from etymology.com, it says it is a poison. Pharmacon from the Greek. Toxicon, pharmacon, which means poison for use on arrows. You see, there's a reason that this figure has a bow. So you just don't look at the bow, you look at all the elements of the bow. The bow represents an arrow that will be dipped in poison or pharmacon. Now let's look at the word crown. The root word of crown is G1238. Diadema or diadema. Diadema. This is where we get the word diadem. Diadem. It is a crown. What does the crown represent? An authority to conquer or to bring, or to conquer or conquering. It's the Greek number 3528 as nikao, nikao. It comes from the Greek number 3529, which is to subdue. It means to conquer, it means to overcome, it means to prevail, or to get the victory. Now, the next question you can ask is, how will it conquer? The beast system, the powers that be who are orchestrating this current ordeal, has been given the authority to use the CV. And we know CV in itself means crown. It means to produce. In verse 6, chapter 6, verse 2 of Hosanna Revelation, it means to pursue and to conquer people. This is being done by way of the bow, the toxon. And when that toxon is injected, it prevails over people. How and why? Because it produces something. It births something, as the Greek word tekto says. And when something is birthed, it has the DNA and RNA on the inside that comes from its producer. Now let's look at the word mark in Revelation or Hazan chapter 13, verse 16 through 17. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave or bond, to be given a mark upon their right hand and upon their foreheads, and that no one should be able to buy or sell except he that has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. The word mark comes from the Greek number 5480 as ka'agma, which means a scratch or etching. That is a stamped or a badge of servitude, a graven or a mark. Now that has a Greek root number of 5482, ka'ax or karasso, which means to sharpen with a point. And the reason you have a sharpened point, it is the idea of scratching or etching. So now let's look at that phrase, the idea of scratching. Now, the Greek number 1125 is grapho. To grave, especially to write, to describe, writing or written. Something is being written when this poison is being injected. Something is being written, if we can say code, and because it has the G1125, the Greek number, as defined as the word grapho, which is similar to graphene. Now go back to Bereshit, Genesis chapter 6, verse 12. All flesh became corrupt through genetic modification. What is genetic modification? It is a writing of codes. You see that all the time in computers and programs. There's the writing of code. If you want to change how something is displayed on a screen, you write the code and it changes the display. And it's done through karasso, the sharpening, the point, the idea of scratching. Let's look at the term the forehead and the right hand in verse 16 rather, of Hazan chapter 13. Before we do that, let's make this point. Let's have this understanding. The most important thing is this. When you look at Scripture from a Hebraic thought, and what that means is from the historical, from the cultural, from the contextual, from the euphemisms, and the allegorical and figures of speech that was used by the people of the book, then one can understand the book. I say that again. Always look at the Scripture from a Hebraic thought, which is from the historical, cultural, contextual, euphemism, allegorical, and figures of speech that was used by the people of the book. Now let's proceed. Let's look at the forehead. The forehead and the right hand represents the full powers of one's mind and body. The forehead in verse 16 has the Greek number 3359 as metopon, which means ops or ops. which is the face. So in essence, the forehead represents also the countenance, or the opposite of the countenance. Where does the countenance come from? The face, the ops, the forehead. The right hand has the Greek number 5495 as care. Care. It has a base or root number 5490, which is through the idea of hollowness for grasping the hand or the power, especially by Hebraism, a means or instrument, which is the hand. Now, how does this relate to worship that is mentioned in verse 15? Revelation 13 verse 15 says, "And there was given to him to give the spirit to the image of the beast, rather, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast." So we have to look at this word worship. It has the Greek number 4352, which is proskuneo, and that comes from the Greek 4314, and it says here probably a derivative of the Greek number 2965, which means to kiss like a dog licking his master's hand, to fawn or to crouch to. That is, literally or figuratively, to prostrate oneself in homage, do reverence to adore. And one of the things that many people of various countries, what they really adore is the system of that country. The system of that country. And anything that is disruptive of that system, people will become irritated and become violent, and many will begin to march in the streets because the system of that country is being changed. What is controlling the system? Remember earlier we talked about the system being an economic system, a political system, and a religious system. So when one of those things become uneasy or unsettled, or it becomes a little off, then one begins to protest. One begins to come out in force and in mass. Worship is simply the willful act of servitude. In this case, to the system, to the beast system specifically. And servitude is the acceptance of what this system produces, which is a toxin. And that toxin is in the forehead, right hand. It represents the full powers of one's mind and one's body. The bow, as we saw in Revelation chapter 6, verse 2, is toxin, or poison. And the purpose is to prevail over people and cause a production of something or a birthing of something. And again, if something is birthed, when a child is born, it has the DNA and RNA on the inside of him or her that comes from its producer. Now let's look at the word in verse 17. Hazan 13:17. Let's look at the phrase, no man may buy or sell. It says, and that no man may buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Let's look at this closely. No man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, 1, the name of the beast. 2, the number of his name. 3. Now one may ask, well, this cannot be the speaking of the jab. This could be speaking of something else, because currently we all are buying and selling. So it cannot be related to this event. Well, let's continue and let's see. Now, when you look at this phrase, no man, automatically one thinks of a human being. Automatically one thinks that it's mankind in general. It's all of us. And if we can go to the store to buy something, if we can go to the store and get something, then surely this is not the beast system, because we're all buying and we're all selling. So let's get into this very slowly and let's see what the scriptures say. Remember, every time we study scripture, we study from the Hebraic thought, the euphemisms, the context, the culture of the people of the book. So let's look at this. The word no in this text has the Greek number 3363. It is translated hename, hename, hename. It has relations to a man, and a man in this text is G5100 as tis, T-I-S. And that means a certain man. So the key word in this definition is certain. Is certain. It did not say all men. It says no man. Henome tis. No certain man. So now we have to look at what is a certain man. Tis is different from anthropos, or human being. I say that again. This verse relates to tis, and tis is not a human being. The verse does not speak of man as human being, because man as human being has a separate Greek number. That number is 444, as in anthropos. And you can see that in Netanyahu chapter 7, verse 9. Anthropos, it makes you think of the study of man, anthropology. So, anthropos is different from the word tis. So what is he saying when he says no man shall buy and sell? It implies those or certain men who are engaging in the system, and not anthropos, which is all human beings. Now I want you to keep that thought in your mind, because just before we finish this quick study, we're going to look at those engaging in the system as tis. Now, let's continue. Now in Hazan, or in Revelation 18, 1 through 4, let's read that. And after these things I saw another Melachim come down from Shamaim, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his esteem. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babel the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Now you can reference that in Yeshayahu, Isaiah chapter 13, verse 21, chapter 21, verse 9, and Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 8. Now verse 3 says, For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornications with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And you can find that in Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 7, and Nahum chapter 3, verse 4. Now let's look at verse 4. It says, And I heard another voice from Shamaim saying, Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. You can find that in Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 8. Now, the question one must ask is, come out of who? Well, we find that in verse 2, where it says, in reference to Babel, in reference to the system. And remember earlier we talked about the systems. Come out of her, my people. Do not, paraphrasing, partake of her sins, of the things that Babel allows, Babel permits, the things that is anti-Messiah, the things that is anti-Torah, the things that is anti the Most High Yahuwah. We are to come out of that. Remember, we talked about no man is different from anthropos. Tis is no man, which means certain men. And because we are anthropos, we are of the Most High, we come away from those, hear this, come out of her, we come away from those who are taking part and who are being a part of the system. Lest you receive, or rather so that you won't receive of her plagues. Now let's bring this to a conclusion. There's three systems within this earthly realm that the beast controls. The economic system, the political system, and the religious system. All of these systems controls mankind in some shape, some form, and some fashion. Now, isn't it very, very peculiar? Or is it a coincidence, or is it by design, should I say, that it mentions, as it relates to the beast, the mark of the beast, the number of the beast, and the name of the beast? Isn't that very coincidental? It mentions that. And at the same time, we have three systems that control us. And out of these three systems, subsystems are there, but they're all up under the umbrella of the economic, political, and religious system. I believe it's by design the Most High put it in that particular fashion or that particular text. The mark, the name, and the number of the name. And so as we are looking for a mark, we forget about the name and the number. And notice what it says, he that hath understanding or wisdom, let him calculate, let him understand the system. Now, to understand the beast system, which is a kingdom, a power, or a system of power, and the worship thereof, and actually the whole book of Hazan or Revelation, one must understand the below references. The book of Daniel, the book of Exodus or Shemot, Isaiah, Yeshayahu, Jeremiah, which is Jeremiah, 1 Kings or Melachim Aleph, 2 Kings or Melachim Baes, 1 Samuel or Shamu Aleph, and Ezekiel or Yehezkiel. All of these books, you'll have to understand that in order to understand the beast system. Shalom, shalom. See you next time on Scripture Nuggets.